Good evening, and welcome to another edition of At the School of Brock's program, I Can Fix This. And with we the people coming together as one and doing what we know's got to be done, using our brain while we still got it, we've come to episode 4, step 3, and as far as I'm concerned, the meat and potatoes of this entire program. So without further ado, episode 4, I Can Fix It, step 3, transparency as a structure. We have established 2 practical standards. First, every major claim must meet the same evidentiary test. Second, every significant decision must be measured by its actual effect on American households. Today, we turn to the condition that makes both those standards possible: transparency. Transparency is not a courtesy. It is not a public relations gesture. It is a structural requirement. Without it, evidence cannot be examined and household effects cannot be measured with any reliability. When information is withheld, delayed, or selectively released, the public is left evaluating decisions in the dark. That is not a minor procedural issue. It is a fundamental obstacle to accountability and to any serious attempt to correct course. Why transparency must be a structural system. It can claim to valuable evidence and household outcomes while still controlling the flow of information that would allow those claims to be tested. When that happens, the standards remain theoretical. They cannot be applied in practice. History shows the pattern clearly. History 1 sample: classification and the growth of secrecy. Over the second half of the 20th century, the volume of classified government information expanded dramatically. Entire categories of decision-making, especially in national security and intelligence, were placed behind barriers that limited independent examination. In multiple documented cases, information that later proved central to public understanding was kept from Congress, the press, and from the public for years or decades. When that information finally surfaced through declassification, official inquiries, or archival releases, it frequently altered the accepted account of why certain high-cost decisions had been made. The practical consequence was consistent. By the time the fuller record became available, the decisions had already been implemented, the cost had already been incurred, and the opportunity for timely correction had passed. Secrecy, once normalized, becomes self-reinforcing. Agencies and officials grow accustomed to operating with a reduced external scrutiny. The public, denied timely access to primary information, is left to evaluate outcomes after the fact rather than while choices are still open. Historical example 2, economic data and delayed recognition. Similar dynamics appear in economic policy. Official statistics on inflation, employment, and growth are released on set schedules and according to defined methodologies. Yet, in several well-documented periods, the lived experience of household costs diverged from the headline figures for extended stretches of time. When alternative data sources, revised methodologies, or later benchmark revisions revealed a more accurate picture of price pressures or wage stagnation, the recognition came after policy had already been set. Families had already absorbed the higher costs. Political and institutional responses lagged behind the reality that households had been experiencing in real time. The issue was not always deliberate concealment. It was the absence of a structural requirement that the most relevant household level information be made available promptly, completely, and in forms that ordinary citizens could evaluate. What structural transparency requires? Treating transparency as structure rather than virtue means establishing clear, non-negotiable expectations. Primary data supports major policy claims must be released in usable form, not merely summarized. Uncertainties, caveats, and conflicting evidence must be disclosed alongside the preferred interpretation. Timelines for release must be short enough that the information can still influence decisions rather than merely explain them afterward. Exceptions for genuine national security needs must be narrow, time-limited, and subject to independent oversight rather than open-ended. These are not radical demands. They are minimum conditions that allow the evidentiary standard and the household test to function. Without them, both prior steps remain incomplete. Evidence cannot be tested if it is not visible. Household effects cannot be measured if the relevant cost and outcome data remain obscured. Applying the standard now. In practice, this step requires a consistent public posture. When a major claim is advanced about the necessity of a foreign commitment, about causes of rising prices, or about the expected benefits of a new policy, the first response is to ask for the underlying information, not the talking points, not the summary. The primary sources, the data series, the assumptions, and the full range of internal assessments. Sorry. I try to keep it at a minimum. If that information is withheld or heavily filtered, the claim itself fails the structural test, regardless of how confidentially it is delivered. This approach does not require assuming bad faith. It simply refuses to proceed as if incomplete information is sufficient for high-stakes decisions. Transparency is the load-bearing element. The evidentiary standard depends on it. The household test depends on it. Any serious attempt to break from trajectory that has produced repeated gaps between official claims and lived results depends on it. When transparency is treated as optional, the other standards become decorative. When it is treated as structural, they become enforceable. Next time we will turn to practical step 4, building accountability that does not depend on the goodwill of the same actors who benefit from the current incentives. Until then, consider these questions. When a major decision is announced, how much primary information is typically made available while the decision can still be influenced? And how much appears only after the costs have already been incurred? Great. What current policy area, energy costs, foreign commitments, or regulatory changes would look different if full underlying data were required as a condition of public acceptance? How often is the absence of timely information treated as a temporary inconvenience rather than a structural failure? Okay. If transparency were enforced as a non-negotiable requirement rather than a discretionary practice, which kinds of claims would become more difficult to sustain? Yeah, okay. These questions are not rhetorical. They prepare the ground for the next step, because once information is visible, the remaining task is to ensure that consequences follow from what the information reveals. That is transparency as structure. That is step 3. And that is the foundation on which the rest of the work must stand. And again, I end, we the people, while you can, while it's legal, I beg of you, please, use that brain while you still can. Love you, mean it. I gotta find that button. There it is. Love you, mean it. God bless.